This is Robert Jeffery, a local artist who has brought some of his beautiful work here that you can look at during the break. He'll be talking about some of these pieces also. His subject matter and style of painting tends to include architectural details and historical references. And he and his wife began traveling in Europe over 30 years ago. They observed art, photographed art, stonework, handcrafted tiles, mosaics, old world artistry that would be really difficult to reproduce today. And he is constantly overwhelmed by the ingenuity, passion, and creativity of the artists and artisans who have come before us. Robert has signature status recently granted with Transparent Watercolor Society of America, also with North Star Water Media Society and Minnesota Watercolor Society. He's been juried into many local, national, and international juried exhibitions. And in 2017, he won the first place award for watercolor from the Minnesota State Fair Fine Arts Competition. For tonight's demo, Robert will complete the final steps in his painting a fishing boat docked at a harbor in the south of France. He will talk about how he handles this complex subject and how he transfers the drawing to paper. Then he will demonstrate the steps involved in creating the final piece. Please give a warm welcome to Robert Jeffery.
Testing. Can you hear me? Okay, good. Well, thank you for inviting me. It's a real honor to be able to be here tonight. I'm always bewildered by requests for me to show how I do something because I just do what I do. I was an art director and an illustrator for a lot of my life. And during that time, you do what somebody else tells you. You tell me to do this, you tell me to do that. So you're getting bombarded and you have to do it to their specs and what they want. And you get really not a whole lot of choices in it. And you have to turn out piece after piece after piece. Well, when I retired, or when I quit that, basically, I said, I'm just going to do what I want to do, the things that interest me. History is one of the things that interest me. I was in architecture in college, and I wanted to be an architectural designer. They wanted to make me an architectural engineer, and the two weren't going to mix, so no, I didn't do that, but I did take drafting, and I'll tell you, that's probably the best course I took in 4 years of college, because I used it constantly in projects, and that even with my paintings. I learned so much about composition, and depth, and how to turn things in your mind. You can see something, you can see it in 3 dimensions. Which is really weird. So, yeah. But anyway, that was the best course I took probably in college, except for some of my art courses. And in my art course, the head of the department was the watercolor instructor, and which was kind of handy. I learned a lot from him, and he kept kicking me out of the art department. 2 or 3 times a year. And then the other instructors would come on and say, just take a day off, come back in. He won't remember that he kicked you out and everything will be set. And it worked, He just like took a day off and come back in and was, oh, hi, how are you doing? Oh, fine, you learn stuff. But I did learn an awful lot from him. And he was quite a good teacher. One thing that he did, and I just want to show you, I still have my first 3 brushes that I ever bought when I was in college. I graduated college in 1969. So these came from 1966. And it'll come to a point. They're Winsor Newton, Series 7, Felinski Sables. This brush now is about $200 or more. This one's close to $200, and I have a little baby one here. It does not come to a point anymore because I use it a lot. But I guess the only thing I say is if you take care of your stuff, buy something good because it will last. And there's the proof. And that was one thing he told me, just buy good, but take care of it. The other brushes that I've learned to use that I really like, I like the ones from Sharp and Sharp. S&S, they're yellow. They're called Fine Line. Sharp and Sharp, they're for photo retouchers usually. But they're sable and they're from France. And they're about a third of the price or a quarter of the price of what Winsor Newton is. They don't last as long, but at that price, it really doesn't matter. But they're very, very good brushes, have a lot of spring to them, and they do come to a nice point when you get them wet. Lately, the last couple of paintings I've been doing, I found these again. I have a striper brush that pinstripers use. They're little short brushes with long dagger. They're the hairs are about twice that long, but the whole brush is really short, so it just holds in your hand. These are dagger watercolor brushes. One's a Princeton, and I can't read what this one is. I don't know what that one is. It's all worn off. But these are fantastic brushes. You can use them. In fact, that's what I'm going to be using for my painting. If you use them sideways, you get a nice broad stroke. They're great calligraphy type thing. If you lift up, that line just melts right into a fine line. You can use them on the back edge, and you can get hair lines, for telephone lines, rigging on ships, anything where you need to have a fine long line, or even detail work around an intricate part. So once you manipulate, you can by turning the brush and using it, and they hold a lot of water and pigment, which is another nice thing. And these little tiny brushes, that you then probably taught to use to do fine lines, and that they don't hold enough water or pigment to really get a flow going, a nice even movement and mark on your paper. And they have different sizes, and this one is squirrel, and this one's synthetic. They're both good. The squirrel one is much more flexible, and it takes a little bit more getting used to, but it really comes to a fine point. And it holds a little bit more water, and that even though it's smaller. But I come to really enjoy those brushes. And the other ones I do is squirrel quill brushes for large areas. You can wash in things. I mix colors on my painting a lot. I'll mix up a color that I want on my palette, put that down first wash. I do a lot of washes, and as it dries, I kind of keep an eye on it, and then we'll get another color and I'll drop it on and let that bleed out and make all these little patterns. And I find these are very good. These also go to a fairly good point, and hold it. And another thing that I did a lot of pen and ink work when I was an illustrator, and I found my old pen. That's an old pen, and you can use it with watercolor. So you can dip it in, and you get the little opening there with And you can come down and you can make some just unbelievably fine lines. Again with it and a detail around things if you need to outline something, and then go back with a brush and just put a little bit of water on the shadow side. That paint will blend out, but you'll have a nice hard edge where you need it. And not all paintings need a hard edge, but sometimes you do. Mine, you kind of do. The bad rap on watercolor is that if you make a mistake, it's sayonara, you know, it's all over, you can't touch. Well, that's not exactly true. When I flip my painting over, I'll show you what I mean. But I have a wonder brush here. It's a stippling brush for stenciling. I have a couple different sizes, but this one's boar bristle. And it's great for watercolor. You can do grass because you can flick up the grass. These are far enough apart and you get a ragged little edge. So you just kind of play with it. And once you get used to what it does, it's great. Clean it out, clean water, piece of towel. You can scrub out an area that you muffed up. It's not hard enough to really break the paper up. If you're gentle, you might have to go back a couple times. You can make corrections and you can save a lot of things. Okay, depending on what the paint is. If it's a dye paint, like an inky type, then you're probably up a creek. So you better think of doing another wash over it and trying to, you know, utilize what you have there and incorporate that into the painting. And let the paper tell you what it wants from you. And that's what I'm going to show on the other side too. Because the waters and that, you kind of let the paper, you put these washes down and you come back the next day and you look and you can see patterns that the paint has dried to. Even if the whole thing was damp at the time, it doesn't all dry at the same rate, and certain paints will congeal or concentrate in certain areas, you know, a little indents. I use cold press paper. I have used rough for my kind of details, a little rough, you know, to do fine lines on. Hot press is great, but it's really hard to do a wash over a wash on hot press because the paint doesn't really soak into the paper. And if it does soak into the paper, another wash over it may not do what you want it to do. So you have to think before you ever touch a brush to the paper at that point as to what your final. You might have to do everything all at once to an area, you know, drop in colors and then let them do what they do. But cold press paper is great. When you come back and you see little patterns, especially for water or grass, or anything, then you play with that. Rocks, you know, size of buildings. If it's a stone building, a castle or a cathedral or something like that. It'll give you a little hints as to how to do the rock, because there'll be a natural shadow you've already created unintentionally. There it is. And who cares if it's not there on the real place, unless you're standing in front of that cathedral at the same time that you're looking or at the picture. Nobody knows. Your interpretation of that is what counts. So those are the tools that I use. Also, a good old toothbrush for flicking paint. Also for flicking masking fluid. Yeah, you thin it down. Yeah, but you get it really thin, and you have to think about it. You don't want blobs coming off, but the finer you can get it, put down a wash. Yep, flick it over what you got. Then let that dry completely. You have to let it dry completely. I take a long time to paint. I don't sit down and do a painting in a half hour or 2 hours. Mine take about 30 hours to do. Okay. a few, the men there coming out from the wall, that took over 40 hours, but that was an emotional trip for me because that picture when or that statue, when I came to it in London and saw that, it stopped me. Okay, and I knew I had to paint that. I had to take that home. That really meant something to me. And as I painted it, my mind went back to that and to what that stands for. The bravery and that those men had. The life expectancy of a pilot the last week of the Battle of Britain, and they didn't know it was the last week, was 7 hours. So, you know, these new kids were going up there and they had about 7 hours of training. You know, they knew how to take it off and land it and how to shoot and turn, but they didn't know how to fight. But luckily it ended, and they came that close to losing the whole country anyway. So it's a very brave person in that. There's all these old guys bent over in their uniforms, all their medals on, they laying these wreaths in front of that. They did that every day. And there were like 15 wreaths. I just put one there. That's my wreath. Okay. But and then when you stand there, like I'm 5'11", I'm looking right into the eyes of the main character coming out, and it's just, you know, it chills now thinking about. But that's the kind of things that affect me, and that's the kind of things I paint because they mean something to me. And, excuse me, and sometimes they mean something to some other people too, that's an added bonus. But after your first little spritz with this dries, do another wash on. You're not covering the whole thing. You're just only down, and then let that water, that wash dry. Do it again, and you'll end up all these different shades when you take all the masking fluid off. Okay, you might have to mask out the area that you want saved, either with tape. You can put masking tape down and cut around and leave that and remove it. But it's a really good way for sprays of water, like from a fountain going up. And you know, it takes about 3 times with it, but you'll be amazed when you brush that off. It looks like hell when you're doing it, you know, but it's sitting on the rubber. It's not sitting on the paper a lot. There's just a little bit. You wipe that off, and all of a sudden it's just this cloud. And it's really amazing. It's worth trying, you know. What the heck? Everybody has a dead toothbrush. Go for it, you know. And try it on the back of a painting. You know, not all the paintings work. My little thing here that I test the paint before I put it down is on the back of a painting that didn't work, as far as I was concerned. So, yeah, now it's usable. So, but anyway, that's the tools I use and kind of why I paint what I paint. And you know, at the break I can talk about those things to anybody that wants. But this picture, it's impossible for me to sit down and do a painting in 2 hours. It's just not going to happen. This is a step-by-step what I go through with all of my paintings. Now, the techniques may be a little different in some of them, but this is the basic step. The first one is the photograph. So you have to take, you know, I take tons of photographs. My wife takes tons of photographs. Those are the only things that I ever use, are photographs that I take or that I've told Janet to take. She takes better photos than I press the thing too hard. I get blurry photographs. So she does it right. So in this case, we were in the south of France on the Mediterranean in a little village called Coulier, yes. I also don't speak French very well. My French teacher in college told me he'd pass me if I promised never to speak French with Frenchmen. And so I said, sure, no problem. Turns out my best friend's a Frenchman. You know. Yeah. Anyway, so we were there, and this little village, it's just a fishing village. And it's also a haunt of the neo-impressionists. Yeah. Yeah, not the impressionists, but the neo-impressionists would all gather down there and they just party, have a great old time, and it's a beautiful place. And if you got a good arm, you can almost hit Spain. So that's that tells you about where it is. You know, it's right down the corner. But it's gorgeous. And so we were walking down by the little docking area there. It's a nice little protected bay that has been there since Middle Ages. And I took a picture of these fishing boats because they were just really colorful and neat looking subject. And there was a neat building that was in the background. And so I took that picture and I took the other picture. So you see what I did? I turned. Well, the picture that's there, it looks like it's all in one place. I've moved things for composition. Okay. There's on the actual photograph, there are a couple more boats. There's another one up in the main area, and there's a couple in the back. Got rid of those. So after finding the picture and deciding on what I want to do, then I go into the composition stage. I go into, I drop it into Photoshop. I say use digital photographs, and I can eliminate things. I can move things around until I get the composition that I want, where I want it. And this is stuff that illustrators use all the time. That, you know, it just makes life easier to be able to see it instead of taking the time to draw everything out and then, oh no, that isn't right. You know, so you move it, you compose what you want. If there aren't people there and you've got people someplace else, drop them in and make sure that everything is perfect, it lines up, and you create the mood, you create the story that you want to have. Not every photograph you take is the perfect 10 to paint just the way it is. You have to have some kind of ability to move things around. There's a very famous painter on television said, when you become an artist, you get a license. You know, and good old Bob Ross. But and you do, yeah, an artistic license, you can do what you want. And again, unless you're standing on that quay looking out at the boats go ahead, but you don't know that medieval lighthouse, which is what that tower is, isn't where it's at. It's about 100 yards farther to the left. So everything just got moved over a little bit, which makes no difference whatsoever to what it is, but it just makes it more interesting that you have that there. So anyway, once I get it laid out and I know what I want, and then I go into the drawing stage. And so I do it in reverse. And the only reason I do it in reverse is because if it's transferring it onto the paper. I used to do things and then put graphite paper down and then redraw it over it, and then you end up with your graphite all over the paper, and it's just a mess. So I don't do that anymore, and I think, well, what can I do? What can I do? Well, if I do it in reverse, flip it over, and then burnish it, because when I was an art director in that, we used to use press type all the time, and you'd burnish these type down, well, sure, I'll just do it that way, and it works really good. And the little tool, yeah, I had one here, I use a crochet hook to burnish it down, because it's got a nice flatter area or a gentle round on one side, and there's like a little point, so if you have a line, you can take the point and press to go through, or you can just use the edge of the crochet hook to transfer. Depending on how hard you do it, you know, it's how well it transfers. But then you can take a look and you go, excuse me, yeah, it's still not right. I got to move this. So you're still composed. You still have a chance to recompose it. Sorry, it's water. But anyway, by the time you get done, you've redrawn the thing about 3 times. Move things around, redraw it, but every time you do it in your mind, you're mapping out exactly how you want this thing to look. You know exactly where things are, you know exactly where the sun is, you know where the shadows are going to be, you know how far these things are apart, you know everything about that area. You know what the boats look like after drawing them for 3 times, because there's details in them that you know that you're going to paint or you're not going to paint. Thank you. So that takes a little while. That's why I can't do it in 2 hours. Because we already wasted part of a day or so right there. So once I get it onto the paper, in reverse, flip it down, and you burnish. And I did the wrong time. And it will leave a line. Yes.
Christian, how do you call this in reverse?
I take a picture when it's on Photoshop. I work in reverse. So I okay. Mhm.
Here, show that.
I will. I blow it up to the sides that I want to use it at. So I know it helps to see the details and everything. Okay, so basically that's the size of the picture going to be. I've moved everything. Okay, I moved these over. Okay, this tower would be about here. So that's how far it's been moved. But and you can see that there's that ship and there's like 3 or 4 or 5 boats there, and this thing extends farther out. I didn't want that, I wanted water to come out. So anyway, I eliminate those when I'm drawing. I just get rid of those. I get rid of this new white boat because there's no place there with those nice wood boats. The gentleman sitting in the bench, I liked him, but I didn't like him there. So I moved him up to here. I didn't like him here, so I moved him back to here. I had that guy. I had him standing talking to the man on the bench. Well, there's a little interaction with people, and I didn't like that. And then I found 3 people, and I grouped them. And you'll see when I turn it over as to what the final thing was. Well, you can see it right about here. There's the group of 3. There's the gentleman on the bench. And there was another person I had walking up to them. Well, it must have been late, and I lost track of when people are on the same plane, their headlines are going to be within a certain area. And if you notice, this comes out there, it would have to be a child, you know, to be where the head is. And it just really kind of frosted me. And I didn't notice it until after I put down the first 2 washes. And I went, there's something wrong here. You know, and they go, oh my God, it didn't draw it right. You know, one of the key things is, you know, where your planes are. So is the painting a disaster, you know? And by that time I put like 3 more days actually painting into it, and I go, oh, let's get out the old magic, you know. So, but in the meantime, I had painted a preliminary one. Okay, this is the one where the gentleman on the bench was moved over to that seawall. The guy talking to him didn't like it, like just stuck out too much. The 3 boats were okay, but I really liked these old boats, and so I decided on the final one. This, instead of doing a black and white with the shadows and all that, this is my black and white with the shadows. And the only reason I do it is I like to paint. I like the act of painting, of putting color down, seeing what it does. So then in my mind, not only do I know the details of the boats, I know basically how I want that water to be, you know, all that kind of stuff. So it's all a learning process. I go into school, every painting I do, I go to school. Everyone's different, and I learn something every time. And that's why I'm amazed that anybody ever wants me to show them how I paint, because, hey, you know, I learn from my just doing it. So anyway, that's my color sample then that I use too, along with the photograph that I have with the old ones and that. So these are only for color, just to remind me of how the shadows were, how dark they were, how light they were. And some of the other details. So that gets us to the other side. And the first wash is the sky and the water, just to get some color down. The second one is to put in some trays for the stone work, the walkway, and to do a little bit on the it's not a monastery, it's a cathedral now. And that's a bell tower, but originally the cathedral wasn't there, it was a lighthouse. And get that painted in, some of the people on the bench, then the far seawall there's another little it's another little lighthouse, I think, on the end of that that they would put a fire in, because it was open. And either that they parked it there. I don't know if else we bargained with that. But it was out there, and there's a beach just in front of that, and everybody was laid out on the beach because it's nice. The sun's on this side. Well, okay, so it's on this side, shooting this way. So that whole area was getting hit pretty good at an angle from coming from over that mountain or that land mass to the side there. Then I painted the one boat, second boat, finished those, did pretty much, I darkened some of the water in the front, darkened the stones a little, did the people. And you can see on the second one down, there's a person standing here on the left-hand side of the picture. And on the next two, there is no person there. There isn't. It got eliminated. So this is the picture. This is basically where that person was standing. And, but this is gonna get cropped in. Right above there anyway, but that person would still get in it, and this side's gonna be cropped in, and the bottom's getting cropped in about here, so they're. You're gonna be right around in here someplace, with what you see, and then the top is right across there. So anyway, this is what I've done there. This boat's finished, this boat's finished, the water should be finished. I may go back and have to touch that up once I see this, it gets progressively darker, the waters as it gets in, because there's more things in the way and the kind of shadows. And then that'll tell me if I have to put another wash on the stone here, or if I have to kind of wash it out a little bit to lighten it. There isn't going to be that much of a show, and I'm even debating whether I want to cut the top front of the boat off and come right up the side, you know, to make it a little more dramatic. But that's neither here nor there. But these two shadows will tell me, and then there's this darkens up, tell me if these are okay. I think they are, and then I may darken this water up a little bit, but this is where the paint that's down there tells me what to do, because there's like little hints as to, oh, look at there's a little blue which wasn't in, but that's a good wave. It's a good indication of just a light breeze on the water, the little ripple going across. So you just take your brush and you just lightly go over with just a little bit darker color that's there. You could even go with, if it's up here near the red, you can do a little red, you know, you're just highlighting it a little bit, and that's all you need to do, you know, but just be aware of what the papers are trying to tell you to do too. It helps. So anyway, as it says, this is the step that the last one is to do the painting. So I think we're going to do a little break at this point. Unless does anybody have any questions on how I got to this point?
Just print off your photograph to the exact size that you want.
Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. Sometimes I do half size. You know, it depends on what's in them, you know, so I can see. I'm getting cataracts, so it's harder for me to see things now. You know, one of my friends, yeah, he was a friend. It was kind of a client too. Les Cooley, the wildlife artist. I down at his studio, and there he is with the artograph machine. And he's got the photographs up in the artograph machine, shooting down onto his paper, and he's drawing off the pheasants or the ducks or whatever they are there, and he puts in another duck, and he puts it where he wants it. He draws that one in, and all this sort of stuff. And these are all tricks that illustrators use to get that down there. It isn't so much trying. If that was the final, if the drawing is the final thing, then no, that's probably not what you should do. But it's the painting that's the final. And when you start painting, and I think you all will agree, it never turns out looking exactly the way the photograph. I mean, there's differences. You know, you start looking, and it's hard to do exactly what the photograph is. Photograph is a photograph. It's there to show you the details. When I do it full size, I do it for landmarks. Okay, that's where mast is, that's where that mast is. I don't want to sit there and have to do, I used to do the little box thing, you know, where you draw 1-inch boxes on the photograph, then 3-inch boxes on the paper, and then you end up with these boxes. You gotta get those out of there. It's a pain in the butt and it takes a lot of time, and you're still basically tracing little, you know, you're taking that thing. I used to do it and have 8-inch marks. And then, you know, 1/4-inch marks on the paper. So you know exactly where all these things are. But, you know, in a business, you can't do that. You don't have time to do that. So you have to come up with a way of speeding that thing up. And it's the planning and all the work that you do before that. It's all the stuff that you did in Photoshop to lay out the painting, to get it to look exactly where you want it and how you want it to be and the story you want to tell. That's the creative part on the first step. How you get it onto the paper, I don't care how you get it on the paper. Vermeer used Lucci. You know, he had a camera Lucci, yeah, he used that to set up his paintings. You know, so the the image is coming from the sitter onto his painting and he's tracing it out, okay? And it's there as a landmark. You're getting all the important landmarks there, but then you have to be able to paint it. And you have to be able to make it look like something, okay? That's why it's called watercolor and not graphite painting or graphite drawing. So anyway,
Question. One of our Zoom participants, Art Reese, is wondering if you ever pass your paintings to eliminate mistakes or correct conversation.
do I ever do what to it?
Crop your painting to correct mistakes or.
Oh, yeah. What I used to just paint out to a little bit past where I thought it was gonna be, and then there'd be just one stuff. So lately I just got painting right to the edge, and I know I'm not gonna use the whole thing. But like I said, this little device here, this little brush, if you don't go at it like too hard. I mean, anything you can scrape through the paper, but 140-pound paper isn't very thick, you know. But if you just kind of swirl around, get rid of it, dab it, get rid of it, and you can even take the rubber cement pickup, and that'll kind of smooth the paper out again. Or take your burnisher and burnish the paper. If it feels fuzzy to you, if you've pressed too hard, that can work too. And then just do a light wash, you know, just see what happens, you know, or maybe even clean water, because you might pull up some paint from. You have to practice it, you have to, but it's this thing where if you make a mistake in watercolor, it's a disaster, it's throw it away. No, you don't have to, you know, if you take a little time, you can fix a lot of things. Yes.
You transfer the first signature into the paper, and getting rid of the tooth when you burnish it. The tooth of the paper.
No, you know what, I was worried about that too. I thought, wow, I'm compressing the paper, I'm flattening out all those little things. As soon as you get the paper wet, those little things pop back up again. You know, I mean, unless you're Charlie Atlas and you're just pressing, but then you're probably pressing right through the whole board and everything. The paper's pretty forgiving, you know, and if it's a 300-pound paper, you're probably home free, because that's even thicker, spongier, you know, in there. But no, it doesn't seem to be a problem. I don't, you know, I'll press and then I'll lift and see if I've got an image. I don't sit there and grind it out. I just do enough to, I get an image, then I'll go back and I'll redraw it once it's on there. So that's the third or fourth time I've drawn that picture is there. So no longer is it exactly like the first one. You know, because it's been worked and reworked and moved and all that kind of stuff. So, but it just makes it easier if you like what your drawing looks like. Put it in reverse, and you can draw it out without doing reverse, and then take a piece of tracing paper, lay it on top of the reverse side, and put it up against the window and draw. Or if you got a light table, do it that way. You can do that too. You'll get a reverse drawing. That's how I did it when I first started. Just put a, you know, my drawing up against the window, put a piece of paper on, and you flip it over so you're drawing it in reverse. Take that, put it on paper, burnish it down, and I use the back of a brush first time. But you know, I mean, it's like anything else. It's just a little bit of trial and error, and don't go at it gung ho. You know, guns. You know, just take it a little bit, see what you've done. You know, as you're burnishing, see what you've done. If there's enough of a mark there that you can see, that's all you're after, because you're going to come back in, and then this is the final edit. Is you pencil in the things that you want to include, and you get rid of the other things. An eraser is a wonderful thing. You can just, the kneaded erasers will take care of that burnished pencil mark right away. You can do your whole paper. It's sparkling clean, and you don't have that stupid graphite that those sheets leave. You know, that's what ruined this one. But anyway, that's basically what I got here to do this part. And but by the time you've drawn it 3 times or 4 times, it's changed quite a bit. Because you're getting pretty sick and tired of some of those little areas. So you're making it a lot simpler than what it was originally. But yes.
Are you basically working on 140 or 300?
It depends. The clock is 300 pounds. If it's going to be a really big painting, I like 300 pound. I did one of Honfleur docks with lots of boats and a lot of people on the sides and all that, and that was on 300 pound hot press. And as I think about it, I don't think I'd ever do that again, because those you can screw up and you can't correct. You know, if you don't watch what you're doing, you accidentally get a bloom that comes across where you don't want it, and there's no way you can hide it with something. Then you're sunk, because you can't get rid of it. That paper's too smooth, and once you start trying to get it off, you rough the paper up, and then it just doesn't. It doesn't work. So cold press works really good. Hot press I really like, but you got to really keep your mind about yourself when you're doing it. But if you really want details, and that, the hot press paper is the way to go, because it's like, you know, glass. You know, it's a. Any other questions?
I think can we hold any other questions till Robert's doing the meeting? Let's just take a quick 5-minute break. Marilyn says there's only 2 things were brought in, so if you want to look at that or take a bathroom break, get a drink of water, and be back seated by about 8:15.
All right. I'll just go over what again I used in the sky cerulean blue. There's a little bit of phthalo blue in there, just to change it a little bit. And there's a little bit of Payne's gray. Payne's gray is a wonderful color. It makes great greens. It makes great shadows and for blue. It is blue. I don't know why I call it gray. But anyway, for trees, it's a fantastic color to use for the darker foliage of trees and grass, and that it's a great color. And then well, I can never remember the name of it. Indigo. Why can't I remember indigo? But anyway, indigo is another one of my favorite blues. It's rich. You don't need a whole lot of it, but it blends well with the Payne's gray and with cadmium red. You mix those together and you get almost a black. So you can go any color you want in there out, and depending on how much water you add to it, how light it gets. So those three colors, you can do a whole painting. Basically, it's a monochromatic, but you can do it. The baby's gray I use for stonework, the building back here, the tower, the quay side, and that's all baby's gray. And then while it's still wet, I'll drop in a little Payne's gray. I'll drop in a little lizard crimson is in there. The tower and shadow there is Davies gray to start out with, mixed with a little bit of Payne's gray just to make it a little bit bluer because it's a little bit farther closer to you than those. Then I did a wash of alizarin crimson in there in this area and down the one side. That gives it a little bit of life to it. My teacher in college, he always used red as a shadow to get things back. And go, well, red brings things forward. No, it doesn't. Not necessarily. It'll send things back. You know, you just do it right, but it gives it life. It gives a little spark of maybe it's even unexpected to see it, but it really works. It works nice. Alizarin crimson, I did a wash right in the corner there. That's much brighter. It's a nicer color anyway. And that's basically how I did that. And size of the building has a little bit of alizarin crimson. There's some ochre, you know, the usual suspects there. Again, Payne's gray, at various amounts of water. The alizarin, blue here was the same. This was all the same. It was Payne's or
Cerulean.
no. Well, there's cerulean in there, and then there's Payne's gray in there too. Phthalo blue is the darker edge, and I was looking at this, well, the sky is just going to blend down to the water and disappear and then come out. And that's not how life is. That water line is visible in the photograph. It's highly visible going across because one is air, one is solid, or it's a liquid, but it's, you know, it's more solid than air. And it definitely is reflecting from up above. The sky right above is a much darker color than what you're looking at when you look out. You get atmosphere in there and it lightens everything up. You look up, and so the skies right above your head are the darkest they're going to be, and then they kind of lighter as they go away. The water reflects the sky, except for the break at the end. That's still that whole water should be a little darker than what you're looking at in the sky, that it separates it. And then up front, you know, you've got shadows and all this kind of good stuff going in, but it's reflecting down from what's there. The only thing, the one thing when you're doing a painting, always remember, and I even use a little sticker at the start, or I'll draw a little sun where I want that sun to be, just to remind me. So when I'm painting, I get enthralled in doing all the details and adding the stuff at the very end, you know, the shadows on there, as to where that sun is and where it's going to be casting the shadow. And it's easy to forget. So, you know, even if you put a sticker or something there, remember where that shadow or where the sun is, and that'll help you keep that straight. Because if you don't, there's something wrong, and it'll bug you. It's just like the person that I drew, and I didn't have the head at the right altitude. And there's something wrong, and I go, oh my God, it's how dumb am I to do that? You know, but it happens, you know, you get enthralled, and I just want a person there, and they just stick them. You got to think all the time, and the more you pre-plan, the more you think these paintings out, the better they're going to be. Okay. Then
People went to west, where you go, what's on the rock?
it depends if I were doing a statue, like I did one in Venice of at the top of the cathedral arch going into the main door, and there's a muse. It's not an angel, but it's this lady laying on the curb, and she's holding a book. So she's a muse. But she had a lot of dark shadow areas. I painted the dark shadow, what were going to be the dark shadows, in a mid-range color at that point. So I knew where everything was. It was basically for me, so I didn't have to think about it anymore as to where to put this stuff. So I painted all the shadows in first, but only about half as dark as I wanted. Then I did a wash over them, and every wash you do, things get a little darker, so that mid-tone shadow becomes a little darker, and then you go, oh, that's pretty good. I want it a little darker here, so you can add one, and that's how then you get this graduations of shadows and stuff going for you. I think it really helps sometimes to put some of the dark areas in right at the start, because that gives you your boundaries. You know, it's like bookends, and then it's okay, this is where this door frame is, or this is where this person's arm is, and these are the shadows that are coming off, you know, onto something. But just remember that it's going to get darker as you progress with doing another wash. The first one you lay down gets lighter as it dries, but then they get darker as you do washes on top of them. So again, it's a kind of a trial and error, hit and miss, but it'll give you a roadmap, and all these things are like roadmaps. That's why I draw the things out the way I do, with all the details, all the little squiggles for the. I know exactly where the things are. I don't have to worry about that, and I've eliminated them 2 drawings before that, and but then you lay them down, you can do a wash over, and they start getting dark. You go, oh, that's nice. And then you can take a different color and wash over. You know, maybe in the gray, you want to add a burnt sienna in there just to warm it up. You know, it's a little dirt, there's earthy color, and all of a sudden it changes this. You know, and so the paper's telling you what to do, kind of, and it's kind of fun. That's what I mean when I like to act painting. And I get enthralled with the painting and what the paper and the paint are doing with each other. And if you're attuned to what's going on and not fight it, kind of go with the flow, you'll have much more fun, for one thing. And realize that. You aren't gonna necessarily ruin the paint, you know, you can. You can fix something if you keep your mind about it, you know, you can blot things out when you first put it down. But that's basically these water things were done in 4 different washes, you know, a little. Darker, a little lighter, and go in and scrub this out and do a wash over it, then you get that luminescent. Look to it with the light coming off of the bottom of the hole, hitting the water. And that, and. You know, the old rule of thumb, if it's a light boat, then it's a dark shadow, if it's a dark boat, it's a light shadow, yes.
I'd love to see you start painting.
All right, I'll try it. But anyway, so I'm just gonna start, I got my little deal here. I'm gonna go in with the grays, I'm gonna do the shadow areas. Under the boat. Now, I did put rubber masquerade on the little oar. I don't know what they're called, thingies, dogs or something like that. And so I didn't have to worry about that when I do the wash over and get rid of them. I'll just go back in with a little gray. I'm just going in with little Davies gray right now. Basically, what I'm doing on wedding paper. These little dagger brushes are just really good and go into fine areas. To get one layer of this on, I kind of try and vary the color, how much paint I put down, so it's not all same Davies gray that we start out with. That makes life a lot easier later on. What's that? Boats were really white inside. Yeah, that's these boats are gonna be hitting the water like this boat here, the white on the top. These are gonna be just as white, but there's gonna be red and other colors too. I could have done the red on the outside first. But I didn't. Okay, now, because there's going to be some red on the outside, a little bit alizarin crimson. And I'm just going to let it flow in, and it just tints it. the inside of the boat curves. And it seems like the side that you're looking into has a little bit of red and it turns blue, a shadow as it gets towards you. It's because it's picking with the sky. Now, a little bit of the
Is that getting wet as you go along so that the new color flows into it? or
Right. Yeah, this is all wet and wet, but instead of trying to mix one color that's going to be the final color, you just keep adding a little bit to it. I knew there was a little red in there, and I know that there's a little bit blue in there, and this indigo is a fantastic color to use. You kind of want to get as much of the various colors that you want to use in there on there while it's still wet. And these are just the first colors, so I'll try later. And from there. I'm putting in some Payne's gray. I'm lifting color off. And bring it back, all kinds of. So I'm trying to do it before the paper gets too dry. Any questions? Ask away.
Said, oh, we're so quiet.
Oh,
Listen to music. Oh my God. You feel like you're perfectionist artist?
what's that?
You feel like you're like a perfectionist artist?
Well, it's just that at certain points, you really have to kind of keep your mind about you. Or it could get away from you.
They're so good. I can't imagine something. So.
But you're not doing the whole painting all at once, you're just doing a small part of it at a time, so. When you look at it that way, it's an abstract painting, because what I'm doing. Doesn't look like anything if you just look at, 2 square inches.
History as an illustrator, I wonder if that's like what you're all about.
Well, that gave me a good handle on how to speed the process up. Or what was important with the process on what I wanted to achieve.
I just painted suppose like this. Just a little bit ago, just so rising in my hair. And I painted the rainbows just like that.
But again, as long as you keep the paper wet or damp, not necessarily wet. I've gone in and mopped some things up because they were too wet. You can keep adding some of these shades in. If you've got a reference photo right there, it's exactly what you want. It's pretty cut and dry. And
Do you try to stick with the colors in the reference photo or you change them?
what's that?
Do you try to stick with the colors in the reference photo or you sometimes change them?
I stick with the basic colors that they are, and then I go with whatever colors I happen to like. But I do, because these were specific boats, I'm trying to keep it to within, shouting distance of what the thing was. But
Draw the ropes in with, to use a brush or
that's what I mean. And what you can do is you can take, I have a architect's ruler, it's one of those triangular ones you look down here. So you can rest your hand on the top edge and lay it on and slide your arm, you get it in the crook of your, keep it, and then you can kind of keep a fairly accurate sweep.
Is that how you made the chain link fence over on that block picture?
Yeah, exactly. But there I had to use one of these littler brushes, and I get about 2 inches, and I had to go get some more paint. And so when you're trying to match up, well, that one was easy because it was little boxes, basically where the mouse is. So I'd end at a junction point. So when I started up again, if it was a little bit thicker, or it didn't matter because it was going to be another line. But it really, it's harder with a little brush for me. And okay. So anyway, basically that's the first thing on the shadow. I have to let that dry. Okay, and if you do happen to get to where the paint is a little dry, just make sure that you wet the whole thing, so you don't get a bloom. And this will also dry to a point where you'll see little designs that the paper is made. And you can, Or you don't have to go back and highlight those. They could be paint chipping. Dents. It depends on what you want to do. Gives the boat character, gives your painting personality. Because the paper's helping you. You know, paper's actually pretty much your friend. You know, it's not there to fight you.
That arches.
What I would do on this is probably go back with after everything is done and I've got this part done, go back with a wash. But this is going to look a lot different in here once this darker shadow on the boat is put in. Now this I didn't make nearly this dark. These are different. You asked about that isn't even close to the colors that are in the photograph, but you can see how that pops with this being darker. It's just lights and darks. Create your eye, you know, that's where your eye goes, is where those things happen. Okay, so I think that's probably enough for that little area. Saying how I got these, I'm gonna put this in. This is cabinet red. I think it's medium. It's a good color to put down as a base. And then you can brighten it with alizarin crimson. Now I'm trying to stay away from the part that's wet inside. So I'm leaving a little bit. There's a pencil line there. And I painted up to the pencil line on the inside of the boat. I'm painting up to the pencil line on the top side of the boat. The pencil line is my separator. But it really doesn't matter if a little bit of red goes in there. Like I said, I'm going to probably do another wash in there anyway, depending on what's there, or I could wash out too. So, but it's the way I go about it. It is a slow process. You know, you can't rush it, or I can't. I often wish I could. But it's pretty rare that I get to a painting or doing a painting and I'm sick of it by the time I'm done. I have had some of those where, my God, why did I ever do one with so much stuff in it? You know, it's like tired of it by the time it's over. But that doesn't happen too often. I'm pretty choosy in what I do. And all this stuff is preliminary colors. You can see what I'm doing right now.
About 5 minutes left.
Okay. But this is how the whole thing is done. You just go through and do washes, layers, And. See if I can get this part done, because this defines the. These boats are so neat with these little things that stick up on the. Guess it's the bow and I don't know if these actually go out and do any fishing anymore. They may just be there for tourists to go. Ooh, that's what I did. But I tell you what, when I get the finish done, I will send this to on the internet, that you can see what the final product is. And because this part of the boat's going to be green. It's actually going to go back to there will be some phthalo blue in there. The phthalo blue makes a great green, and Payne's gray makes a great green, and I'll drop in maybe a little bit of burnt sienna in there, or umber in there, just to warm it up. It should come out looking very close to reality.
I have a last minute question.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a limited number of paints you work with and you make your own colors? I mean, do you have the primary colors plus Payne's gray and a couple others, and the rest of the colors you make by mixing?
Right. My go-to colors are Payne's gray, indigo, cerulean blue, and phthalo blue. Those are my 4 blues that I use. And then I use cadmium red or Windsor red. The same. Alizarin crimson is my go-to highlight red. It's beauty. The earth colors, I have them, burnt sienna, burnt umber, doing an old building, a rock wall, shadow, texture, wash that into the Davies gray, and all of a sudden you have an old rock wall. And then drop in a little Payne's gray in some of the shadow areas. It's done for you. As far as greens go, I have Hooker's green, and there's a sap green, I think is the other green, but I use those, I mix those with the phthalo blue, trees in that, if I want something really bright, but, Payne's gray and the phthalo blue with a little bit of Hooker's green, that just, and thin it out, and you can come up with really great greens. Greens are a hard color to mix, but I don't know, they're pretty easy, I think. I don't have one anymore, and I get some, but I had a purple. I think it was a Windsor purple or something like that. And you think, oh, what the heck's that? But you drop just a couple little drops of color in the shadow with that, and it's opaque enough that it can sit there, and so you'll see it, but you won't see it. So it just livens up that color. Same with cerulean blue. I'll go over the whole thing, different areas, with just a light wash of cerulean blue, and all of a sudden everything brightens up because the cerulean blue sits on the top. It's an opaque paint, but if you thin it out, it becomes semi-transparent, but it brightens everything. Okay, and want a little more bright, do another wash. It's the washes make the difference. If they take time, you have to let things dry and that, but unless you've got somebody cracking a whip on you, I think most of us probably have enough time to do these things.
You usually drop your paintings up about like the way you have that.
I do. If it's 300-pound paper and I'm doing a big sky and said there's a barn or something, I do rural scenes too. I may do it flat and let it puddle, and I'll get a stormy sky and let the paper do some weird things. But then I'll tilt it. That was a big thing learning, is how to tilt the papers and that, see what's happening, get it, and then dropping in a darker color and tilting it, and then you get the shadow and the cloud and the storm going through, or you can get a wash and all of a sudden it's the rain sweeping down. So anything you can do to get your result is completely a-okay. It's the final result that matters. And as you see, when I'm just doing this little shadow, I didn't stay in the lines on some of the things, so it didn't matter if I drew it or I didn't, but it gave me a road map of where everything is. These two boats don't have nearly as much detail as the center boat with the sails and this one. But again, if you look at the photo and then look at that, they don't look anything alike. But if you glance at the photo and then look at it, go, wow, that's just, well, okay, good. It's a trick of the eye. We're magicians, okay? And that's the whole idea, is you to trick somebody into thinking that that one-dimensional piece of paper is a three-dimensional piece, that you're actually looking at a boat sitting in water. And that's alchemy, and you're a magician. And you should be happy that if you pull it off, you and Merlin, you're pretty good company then, right? But yeah, I wish I wasn't so slow. But that's my process. Is I take time, I do it, but I will show you what the final is, and it'll be cropped to where I think it's going to be cropped. In fact, I suppose I could send both. You can see where I crop and that, and it will look a lot different. These shadows right down here are going to make such a complete difference to what the picture looks like, because these boats are dark, especially back in here. It's the front, the inside is what's light, and there's red seats and all that. So it will look a lot different. It'll look kind of kind of similar to that. That I wrote. Because I've already changed the colors on the inside, so, but, anyway, thanks for having me.
Thank you.
I hope I didn't bore you.